always was to ensure that Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu is served very nicely. And how is Gauranga Mahaprabhu going to be served nicely? When his intention of flooding the entire world with the holy name is served. In a similar way, her spiritual master, His Holiness Jayapatak Maharaj, empowered her to serve everybody by calling her as Navadvipa Sachi Devidasi. And today, let us receive that nectar from her on how Krishna can enter our own lives. Mataji, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you. I want to thank Shyamkund Prabhu and Krishna Prabhu for giving me this opportunity to talk about Krishna Leela today and tomorrow. I don't consider myself to be very qualified to be speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam or any scripture for that matter. But by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I have received this opportunity. And please bless me that whatever I speak today will invoke, if it has not already been invoked, further love and devotion for our dear Lord Krishna. So we'll begin. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpadarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Krishtani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this Kartik month we are covering Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, which talks about all of the Leelas of Lord Krishna, beginning with his appearance, his killing of Putana, his killing of Trinavarta. He has shown by now his universal form to Mother Yashoda. The Damodar Leela is also finished. Krishna has released the twin Arjuna trees, the various other childhood pastimes of Krishna. He has killed the demon Aghasura. And then the last couple of days we heard about the Brahma Vimohan Leela, how Lord Krishna actually bewilders Brahma. And Krishna then kills an ass demon by the name Dhenukashur. So in chapters 15, 16, and 17 of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this Kaliya pastime is detailed out. So in chapter 15, at the very end, the Gopas along with Krishna are out herding the cows. So Krishna would be around 6 years old at this time. And suddenly, all of the gopas and all of the cows, for some mystical reason, feel extremely thirsty. And they come to this lake that is within the river Yamuna. Yamuna is also known as Kalindi. Although the boys knew that this lake was dangerous, they had been told about it before, but they couldn't resist this thought of wanting to just quench their thirst. It was not just the gopas, it was all of the cows as well, and the calves. So what do? They take a sip of water from this venomous lake, and all of them die immediately. Immediately they all die. And Krishna just casts his merciful glance upon them and revives them back to life. And the gopas wake up and they're thinking, wait a minute, I thought I died. Didn't you die? Didn't I die? But we are all alive. And they immediately give credit to Krishna. It's only because of Govinda's anugraha that we're alive. Krishna saved us. So this was towards the end of chapter 15. And in chapter 16, Sukadeva Goswami, who has a tendency to keep things very, very brief when he's talking about the Leelas, he summarizes this entire Kaliya Leela in one verse. He says, this black Krishna jumped into the black Yamuna and killed this black Kaliya. Done. Pastime is done. But Parikshit Maharaj was not satisfied. Wait a minute. This is something more beyond this, right? So Parikshit Maharaj asks, well, first of all, can you tell me how did this Kaliya end up in this Yamuna river, in this lake? What was the reason that he was here? And knowing that he is a land animal, how did he end up in water? Why is he living in the water? What's the reason for that? And if he's such a venomous snake, why was he afraid of Garuda? Why was he living here? He could have fought Garuda. So these are the questions that Parikshit Maharaj asks. Parikshit Maharaj is anxious to hear more about this pastime. He was not satisfied with Sukadeva Goswami just briefly saying the black Krishna jumped into the black Yamuna and killed the black Kaliya. So one of the symptoms of devotees is that no amount of Krishna Katha is sufficient for us. We want to hear more. This hearing process is so purifying for all of us. And then Shukadeva Goswami begins to recite the pastime. So within this river, there is this lake body in which Kaliya was residing. Now Kaliya was so puffed up with his power, he had become so proud that his venom actually increases. And Sukadeva Goswami describes how this lake that was occupied by Kaliya and his wives and his extended family, the lake had become poisonous. The waters were boiling, and the vapors from the water were so poisonous that any bird that would fly above this lake would just immediately fall dead. And In addition, the conditions were so bad that there was no vegetation in and around the lake. There was no life except for one kadamba tree. So the boys have been revived, the Gopas have been revived, and they're looking, where is Krishna gone? Well, Krishna has climbed this very tall kadamba tree and he's getting ready to perform his Leela. So what does he do? Krishna tightens up his waist belt, he puts his hair up in a bun, he slaps his arms and dives into the lake. And Sukadev Goswami explains that the force of Krishna's diving is so significant that it creates a tsunami effect. Sukadev Goswami explains how, with Krishna just diving into this lake, the water went in all directions, 100 bow feet long. So what is Kaliya's reaction? Who dare disturb me? This is my house. This is my domain. Who is trespassing here? So Krishna was very happily frolicking in the lake. He was just happily enjoying himself. But he was churning the water so much that it induces Kaliya to come out from deep within the lake. And Kaliya comes and sees, who is this little boy? He looks so tender. He's got a yellow garment on. He's smiling. The mark of the Srivatsa is on his chest. And Kaliya immediately bites Krishna. He wraps his coils around Krishna. And Krishna apparently falls unconscious because Kaliya had trapped him. So meanwhile, the Gopas are watching this and they think Krishna has died. Krishna has left his body. And they all fall unconscious on the banks of this lake. The cows are so distressed to see Krishna trapped in the coils of Kaliya that they just cry with anguish, cry out in distress. And pretty soon, other omens are experienced by the Brajavasis, indicating that there was something very dangerous about to happen. So what do the Brajavasis think immediately? Where is Krishna? Where is our life and soul? We are experiencing this omen. Something must be wrong. Something must be terribly wrong. And immediately they all go out in search of Krishna. They think Krishna has been attacked by so many demons. Again and again, he seems to be attracting demons. So something must be wrong. We need to go find Krishna. We need to take care of him. We need to protect him. So everybody is in anguish. They rush out of their houses. They are distressed. But there is one personality that is not distressed. He's very calm. Who is this personality? Lord Balaram. You see, that day was Lord Balaram's appearance day. So he had not accompanied Krishna and the Gopas for this grazing. He was at home. And we'll get into the reasons as to why he ends up being at home and not on the banks of that lake. So Balaram was not distressed. He knew that Lord Krishna was in control. There was nothing to worry about. But that was not what the Brajavasis were experiencing. So they don't know where Krishna is. So what do? Wherever Krishna walks, he leaves his lotus feet imprints. And they follow the imprints of Lord Krishna's lotus feet until they arrive at this lake. And what do they see? Krishna is lying motionless. The boys were unconscious. The gopas were unconscious. The cows were crying out in distress. It was as if the life airs were sucked out of the bodies of the Brajavasis. Seeing Krishna lying unconscious. Mother Yashoda immediately wants to enter the lake to protect her child, to rescue her child. And the gopis prevent her. She falls unconscious. Nanda Maharaj, along with the cowherd men, want to enter the lake. But Lord Balaram, who has accompanied them, expands himself and stops them all from entering the lake. It would have been a disaster if they had entered the lake. So the gopis are trying to console Mother Yashoda, saying, you know, after all, your child killed Putana. Shakatashur he has killed. Dhenukashur he has killed. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. So they're trying to console Mother Yashoda, telling, don't worry, he will be all right. So, but then the Vrajavasis were in such deep distress. Krishna is laying unconscious, apparently unconscious. You know, I was listening to some lectures and the senior Vaishnavas were saying, you know, Krishna likes an audience, you know. So if he has to perform his Leela, the Gopas are lying unconscious, Brajavasis are not around, what's he going to do? He's not going to perform his Leela, he needs an audience. So lights, camera, action. All of the Brajavasis are there. And the most important of them, Srimati Radharani is there. So time has come for him to perform his Leela. So Lord Krishna decides, okay, if I am unconscious any longer, these Vrajavasis will die in separation from me. So better I rescue the situation myself. So Krishna expands his body. You see, what is mystical is that Krishna expands his body without really expanding his body. Kaliya just feels that Krishna has expanded his body multiple fold, that he is forced to release his grip on Krishna. So the acharyas are saying that this entire episode took 6 hours, and out of those 6 hours, Krishna was in the coils of Kaliya for at least 2 to 3 hours, waiting for the Brajavasis to arrive so that he could now perform his Leela. He needed an audience. So Krishna expands, forcing Kaliya to release him. And Krishna playfully, runs circles around Kaliya. So Kaliya would try to catch him and Krishna would escape. And like this, constantly they were trying to battle each other, but every time Krishna would escape. And eventually Kaliya becomes so tired, Krishna mounts on his hood. So Sukadev Goswami says that this Kaliya serpent had 1,000 hoods, of which 101 were prominent. And on all the hoods, there was jewelry. And Krishna begins his dance. The audience is ready. And who else arrives there? Oh yes, all the demigods have come. Narada Muni is there, Lord Shiva is there, Indra is there, the Gandharvas are there. Everybody has come with their instruments. An orchestra ready for Lord Krishna's dance. And such a dance. Krishna was not dancing on a flat surface like Lord Shiva was, like Nataraj was. This surface is undulating. The hoods of Kaliya, the 1,000 hoods, were going up and down and up and down. There was one group that was there to take notes. How to dance. These are the Apsaras, the Apsaras dance. They are the dancers. They were not dancing. Everybody else was playing their musical instruments. They were glorifying Krishna. They were watching in amazement. How is this? Our Lord is dancing so beautifully and so gracefully on Kaliya's hood. So the Apsaras, the dancers, were taking notes. Dance tips 101. How to dance. So the Lord begins his dance. So every time the Lord would step on one of the hoods, another hood would pop up. And the Lord would put his lotus feet on that. And like this, the Lord subdues Kaliya. Every time he would step on one hood, the venom would spit out. So one by one by one by one by one, Lord Krishna steps on all of the 1,000 hoods, leaving his lotus feet imprints on the hoods of Kaliya, forcing Kaliya to get rid of all of the venom that was in him. So Kaliya is near death. Near death. In his mind, he realizes this is Lord Krishna. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Nagapatnis, his wives, were distressed. And they approached Lord Krishna. And Sukadev Goswami says, how they were there with their children. They put their children in front of them. And they offered their obeisances to Lord Krishna. And therein begins the prayers of the Nagapatnis. They wanted their husband to be liberated. And they wanted their husband to take shelter of Krishna. And these beautiful prayers, 20 verses in chapter 16, are the prayers offered by the Nagapatnis. And the very first shloka is most wonderful. I will just read the translation of the shloka. Their very first offering, the wives of the Kaliya serpent said, the punishment this offender has been subjected to is certainly just. They are referring to their husband as this offender. And what are they proclaiming? Their very first statement, they're telling Lord Krishna, the punishment that you're meting out to our husband Kaliya is just. What you're doing is right, my dear Lord. Sri, the Nagapatnis were devotees of Lord Krishna. And they say, after all, you have incarnated within this world to curb down envious and cruel persons. You are so impartial. They're telling Lord Krishna, you are so impartial that you look equally upon your enemies and your own sons. For when you impose a punishment on a living being, you know it to be for his ultimate benefit. My dear devotees, when we think, why is the Lord punishing us? Please understand that that is the Lord's mercy. As Varada Krishna Prabhu rightly said, all the Leelas of the Lord are sugar-coated with his mercy. So the Nagapatnis say, we know our husband. He is so selfish. He is so arrogant. He is so envious. He is so angry. You had to do this to get out and get rid of all of his anarthas. So my dear Lord, your punishment is very just. This is why you come frequently. People may think that you're so partial, but actually you are impartial. You don't look upon your own parts and parcels as enemies and friends. You're equal. Therefore, when you bestow your mercy, whether that mercy comes in the form of a positive outcome or it apparently is a negative situation, ultimately, my dear Lord, you're doing this for the benefit of that individual. And then the Nagapatnis are saying, actually, what has Kaliya done? What has he done that he's received this mercy from you? What is this mercy that you have bestowed upon him, that you have placed your lotus feet on all of his 1,000 hoods? How is it that even Lakshmi Devi doesn't get this benediction easily? Great devotees are hankering for your lotus feet. But why is it that you placed your lotus feet on our husband's head? Did he do something wonderful in his past life? Did he accumulate so much punya? But we know him. We know his character. He's wicked. He's so sinful. He's our husband. We love him. But we know his character. The reason he's assumed the body of a serpent is because he's angry, he's envious. So what did he do? That caused you to put your lotus feet on his head. How did he receive this mercy? And I'll just read the shloka translation. They're asking Krishna, did our husband carefully perform austerities in the previous life with his mind free of pride and full of respect for others? Is that why you are pleased with him? Or did he in some previous existence carefully execute religious duties with compassion for all living beings? And is that why you, the life of all living beings, are now satisfied with him? They're asking Krishna. How did this happen? So after praying profusely like this, the Nagapatnis say, after all, he is your child. My dear Lord, please forgive him. And they say at least once a master should tolerate the offenses committed by the child. And they say, please forgive him. He does not know who you are. He does not understand your power. He does not understand that you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please give our husband back to us. We cannot, he may be the worst of characters, but we cannot live without him. And they say, my dear Lord, we are just your maid servants. Tell us, what is it that we should do? So Krishna, being very pleased with these prayers of the Nagapatnis, he releases Kaliya. And then Kaliya offers his prayers. So the Nagapatnis have offered 20 verses, and Kaliya offers 4 verses himself. And he says, my dear Lord, I've occupied this body of a snake because I'm envious, I'm jealous. So I'm not surprised about my instincts to attack you. And he says, I'm so ignorant. I'm so filled with anger. But it is because of my conditioning. It's my nature. I'm occupying the snake's body. It's my nature to be this way. But somehow or the other, I've received your mercy. And Kaliya ends by saying, my dear Lord, please forgive me and do whatever you wish with me. I have offended you. And Kaliya says, you punish me or you shower your mercy on me. It's your choice. I leave it up to you. You do what you want with me. And then Krishna says, very pleased with Kaliya's prayers, Krishna says, go back to the Ramanaka Islands where you used to actually live. Go back there. You please vacate this lake, vacate the Yamuna river, and go back to the Ramanaka Islands. So now we'll briefly come to the history of how did Kaliya end up in this lake. So there was a rishi by the name Shaubari who used to meditate deep within the waters of the Yamuna. And Garuda used to come frequently and to eat the fish. And one day Garuda kills a fish and the rest of the fish are offering their prayers to Shaubari Rishi and asking him, begging him, can't you protect us? Hearing this, Shaubari Rishi curses Garuda. He says, if you ever come on top of this lake, you will die. So Shaubari Rishi had cursed Garudadev that he could not come anywhere close to where this body of water was. Now, what has that got to do with Kaliya? I will not get into the deeper pastimes because we don't have time, but I will just talk briefly about a couple of sages. There was a sage by name Vedashira. He was meditating in the Vindhya mountains. It was his ashram. And after a lot of meditation, he decides to go on a yatra. Meantime, another sage by the name Ashvashira has come there. And he's thinking, this is a nice ashram. I can sit here and chant the holy names of the Lord. So he begins chanting and meditating. And meanwhile, Vedashira comes back. And he immediately gets angry. He says, wait a minute. How come you've come here and occupied my ashram? And Ashwashira says, well, nobody was here, so I occupied it. I mean, this is my domain now. I am sitting here and chanting. What's wrong? So Vedashira gets very angry. He says, it was occupied by me first. You please move out of here. This is my ashram. So like this, the two of them are going back and forth. And Ashwashira tells Vedashira, what's wrong with you? You call yourself a sage? You are trying to claim stake to a property that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Lord. I curse you to become a snake. Hearing this curse, Vedashira gets very upset and he says, how dare you curse me? You are the trespasser. You came here. You are occupying my domain and you have the nerve to curse me. And Vedashira says, I curse you, Ashwashira, that you will become a crow in your next life because it appears that you like to feed off of others' leftovers. So this Vedashira actually becomes Kaliya in his next life. And Ashwashira actually becomes Kagabhushundi, who is a great devotee of Lord Ram. So this Vedashira has occupied the body of Kaliya now. And Kaliya and all the snakes were living on this Ramanika island. And Garuda would frequently come there and feed off of the snakes. That was his natural food. So the snakes reach an agreement with Garuda. Don't indiscriminately kill us. We will offer, regularly each of us will take turns, we will offer one of our offspring to you. So like this, there was an agreement. So it was Kaliya's and his family's turn to make this offering to Garuda. And Kaliya, instead of making the offering to Garuda, he eats it himself. And Garuda becomes so angry, he attacks Kaliya. And the great fight ensues. And Kaliya goes running to Anantashesh, whose older brother, Lord Balaram's expansion, Anantashesh, and asks Anantashesh, what should I do? Garuda is chasing me. How can I protect myself and my family? And Anantashesh says, actually, why don't you go take the shelter of this Yamuna river? There is this lake. Go take shelter there. And in that process, Anantashesh tells Kaliya this pastime of Shaubari Rishi, how he had cursed Garuda, and therefore Garuda has no business being over in this body of water. And that's how Kaliya comes and takes shelter in that lake. So some of the lessons for us, or takeaways for us from this pastime is as follows. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 16 that those who are envious of him, and I'll just read the translation of the shloka, that those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetuate to the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So Lord Krishna repeatedly in the Bhagavad Gita says that it is only those who have this quality of anusuyave, which is non-enviousness. Multiple times Krishna tells this to Arjuna. It is only those who are non-envious who can know and understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who can understand this divine knowledge. If we have envy in us, well, you are certainly keeping the Lord at multiple arm's length. The Lord does not come into our lives as long as we have this envious nature in us. And His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, in one of his lectures, he was saying, in this terms of the pastime of the Lord quelling Kaliya, by dancing on his hoods. Maharaj explains beautifully that a devotee's natural inclination is to bow down to the Lord with love and affection and devotion. But what is the symptom of a non-devotee or an atheist? They are so envious that they are forced to bow down in front of Lord Krishna when he comes in the form of death. I was listening to this pastime as well, in chapter 15, when the Gopas all die and they are revived by Krishna, they immediately give credit to Govinda. They say it is Govinda who protected us, Govinda Anugraha. We were saved by Govinda. So I was listening to another preacher talking about giving this example, there was a man who climbs a coconut tree. He sees 100 coconuts hanging on a tree, and he thinks, oh, nice profit I will make. So he begins to climb this very tall coconut tree, and suddenly he looks down and realizes, oh my God, I have climbed such a distance. I hope I'll be able to carry the coconut down with me safely. Doesn't look like I'm in a very safe spot. And then suddenly there is a gust of wind, and the coconut tree is swaying this way and that way. And this man on the tree begins to pray to the Lord, and he says, my dear Lord, whatever happens, if you can please protect me, I will offer this 100 coconuts to you. And the minute he offers his prayers, the wind stops and he begins to come down. As he's coming down, he's thinking, actually, I worked so hard to climb up the tree. I will give 75% of the coconuts to Krishna, not 100%. And he's coming down further and he's thinking, actually, it was my idea, to climb the tree. It was my effort, my endeavor. Maybe just 50% of the coconuts I'll give to Krishna. And then he comes down, 25%. Suddenly the wind blows again and he's just this way and that way. And he is put in fear and he says, okay, Baba, I was just kidding. I was just joking. I will give you all 100 coconuts. Okay. So like this, as Jivatmas, we're always trying to figure out, is it really the Lord who is helping us, or is it our own endeavor that we are experiencing success? And the senior devotee was saying that we are so eager to blame Krishna, even as devotees. When something goes wrong, we say it is Krishna's mercy. We attribute it to Krishna right away. I'm going through difficult times, it must be Krishna only. Who else? But when something positive happens in our life, we are very hesitant to give that credit to Krishna. We want to take the credit because we think it is our endeavor. But when something goes wrong as devotees, Krishna is doing this. Something good happens, no, my effort is there, right? My endeavor is there. So Krishna actually wanted to save Yamuna. And I heard from another devotee who said that, look at the mentality of Shaubari Rishi. He was trying to solve a material problem with a material solution. And one can never solve one's material problem with a material solution, because that solution will be temporary in nature and will be imperfect in nature. The results will be imperfect. That one should look at every single problem in life through the lens of spirituality and understand how one needs to deal with that problem. You see, Shaubari Rishi curses Garuda in order to protect the fish. But what ended up happening? Kaliya comes and occupies that space, and anyway the fish were killed. So his curse was ineffective. It didn't yield the ultimate result that he wanted, which is the protection of the fish. So the senior devotee was explaining that how for every material problem, there is a spiritual angle, that we must approach every aspect in life with spirituality. Understand the deeper purpose and take the shelter of Krishna through prayers, through sincere prayers. Our endeavor definitely has to be there to solve the problem. But the result is definitely not in our hands. So Krishna wanted to protect Yamuna Devi. And the minute Kaliya and the serpents and the rest of his family leave this lake, immediately vegetation and everything blooms around, suggesting that when we focus on getting rid of our anarthas through our sadhana, through sincere sadhana, by practicing this ABCD formula, then Krishna is ready to come and occupy your heart. As Paramatma, he is just a witness. He is not engaged in your life. But the minute you accept him as Bhagavan, then Krishna is personally involved in your life. Another thing that we can understand through the Nagapatni's prayers is that devotee association is purifying. Because the Nagapatnis, even though they knew that their husband was rascal number one, they begged the Lord to protect him. The power of a devotee's prayers can save you. So all of us should constantly be praying for each other, that we may glorify the Lord, that we may always be in the proper mood of humility. Without humiliation, how can you get humility? Prabhupada's disciple, Sriman Mahatma Das, used to say that all of us want to be humble, but none of us want to be humiliated. But one cannot reach the platform of humility unless we experience some humiliating circumstances in our life. Without this humiliation, how will we get humility? How will we learn that we need to depend solely on Krishna? So, the humiliation that Krishna imposes on Kaliya causes Kaliya to accept that he is the Supreme Lord. It's only then Kaliya says, you do what you wish. I will accept whatever is your desire. So my dear devotees, an important thing to understand here for us is that we may all experience difficulties in life. But there is a deeper reason behind why we are undergoing that experience. It is for us to further surrender ourselves to Krishna. So faith depends on three things. One is knowledge, the second is belief, and finally trust. Without these three ingredients, our faith in the Lord will be shaky, flimsy. Something goes wrong and immediately you will blame the Lord. So my prayers for all of you today is that hearing this pastime, there is a Falashruti. The Bhagavatam, Krishna himself says, what is the Falashruti? That hearing this pastime of Kaliya, Kaliya represents envy, ego. So hearing this pastime, may all of our anarthas be subjugated by the mercy of devotees here, by the mercy of Guru, by the mercy of Lord Hari, and my prayers for each one of you. And I beg you to also pray for me that all of my anarthas also be subjugated, my envious nature be removed, so that I can faithfully serve my Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpadarupyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnava vrinda ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gurudev ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Any quick comments or questions? Mataji, maybe you can unmute whoever wants to speak, or meet Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, you can raise your hands if you have any question. I will call out your name, or you can also post your questions in the chat.
Difference between humble and humility.
Difference between
Humble and humility.
You mean humiliation and humility, or humble and humility?
Humble and humiliation.
Humiliation, here, sometimes we have to undergo certain circumstances in life to demonstrate to us that perhaps really we are not in control.
Yeah.
So in order to accept the Lord, one has to understand, first of all, that we are not independent of the Lord.
Right.
That we are, see, how does one take the shelter of the Lord? It's only when you have no other option, right?
Right.
As long as you feel that you are in control, as long as you feel that you have the power to address every single situation, why would anyone take shelter of the Lord?
Right.
You know, when everything is going well, you really don't need Lord in your life, do you? It's only when things begin to go wrong, you begin to think, is there a God? Have I done anything to make somebody unhappy? Have I displeased the Lord? We never take shelter of the Lord when things are going well in life. So it's only when we undergo difficult circumstances, it causes one to ask questions.
Okay.
Right. So through that aspect, humiliation does not necessarily mean humiliation the way we understand it, which is somebody insults you, right? We are just talking about difficult circumstances itself that causes us to humble ourselves and understand that really we don't know the solution for everything. We don't have the solution to every problem. And we need to take the shelter of a higher power, of a higher authority.
Okay.
So that brings us to that platform of humility.
Better way.
Hare Krishna. Well, Krishna Prabhu, do you want to add something?
Please can you repeat.
Hare Krishna.
Call.
Is there another question?
Yes,
Hare
so
Krishna,
Anand,
you ask me something.
Krishna,
Krishna Prabhu, you had unmuted. I was going to ask you, did you want to add anything?
To this humiliation and humility.
Yes, yes.
I thought the question was, what is the difference between humility and
Humbleness.
humbleness?
Mm.
So actually Prabhupada says humility means prepared to give respect to everybody and not expecting any respect for ourselves. Prepared to give all respect to everybody, all living entities, but does not expect any respect for oneself. Prabhupada says that is the definition of of humility. Now, humbleness, literally humbleness means little different in the sense that we use this word more to say he had very humble beginnings, humble origins, which means his origin or he's not, humbleness means he comes from not a very significant materially or spiritually background or situation. So little grammatically, I mean, literally speaking, humbleness means coming from such, it's like, say, somebody, great devotee born to a very simple family. So we say he had humble beginnings, very humble. Or someone becomes a Nobel laureate, but he actually begins very in a small way. Like some of these CEOs, Apple founder, etc. They began their work in some garage. So we say very humble beginnings. Situation vis-a-vis what he, I mean, present or past situation vis-a-vis what he has achieved today. So very humble beginnings, we say. So humbleness by itself is not a, humbleness could mean material quality as well. Just referring to one's material situation, more or less, literally. But of course, in spiritual context, we say that humbleness means that even though he may have achieved much, he acts as if he is from a very simple background or situation. Even though he's very celebrated, even though he's a big acharya, he acts as if he's a common person, something like that. Hare Krishna. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you for that wonderful answer to that question. Thank you.
Mataji, Dandot Pranam. Anand here.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for this wonderful session. So I just wanted to, kind of comment, it's like, Mataji, I have heard about this Kaliya Leela many times. But now I understand and the importance of hearing, right? Hearing in the sense, hearing from an authentic source or authorized source. So this Leela is not just a Leela. In each and everything, there is a learning, there is a lesson. Like one of the wonderful lesson which I have learned is the Shaubri Rishi's Shrap to Garuna, right? So we cannot solve any material problem with material solution. That was a wonderful, key takeaway from me. And apart from this entire Leela, right, what I have understood is hearing this from a authorized source, Mataji. And thank you so much for this, for such a wonderful session. That is it I wanted to say. Dandvat Pranam.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
1 minute. If you don't mind, can we call those who have raised their hands? I noticed people who have raised their hands. So, Vamika Mataji, I'll come back to you, Lakshman. Just give us a second.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the session. It was truly enchanting. So what I want to know is that Krishna's Leelas are so beautiful, so divine. And this month, every day, we are saying the Damodar Ashtakam. We are remembering the Damodar Leela. But I guess if it was up to us, we would celebrate each and every Leela. So why in particular are we like only celebrating Damodar Leela was my question.
The Damodar Leela is most talked about Leela by the Acharyas as well, because of the sweetness of Mother Yashoda's ability to conquer the Lord. With all the other Leelas, there are different rasas involved and different levels of surrender. But the topmost devotee who could subjugate the Lord and bring the Lord under her control is one that is worshipped most, implying here for us that to the level of our sincerity and devotion, that Lord Krishna reciprocates with us. And so much so that Krishna is willing to become the servant of his devotee. See, in a lot of the other Leelas, Krishna is not the servant of his devotees. There are different levels of devotees and various levels of consciousness. But Mother Yashoda's binding her son, who is the Supreme Lord, is considered the topmost Leela because of her pure devotion for the Lord. Hence, Damodar Leela is celebrated more and spoken about more because of the joyous nature, the mischievousness of Krishna, his trying to outwit Mother Yashoda constantly, how he ultimately gets trapped and how he finally says, okay, chodo, let her tie me up. I don't want to make her too tired. This Leela cannot go on forever. I have to still, release the 2 trees in the courtyard. I have other things to do. So finally he consents to be tied up by his own mother. But yes, each Leela is very sweet, but the sweetest of them all, I would say, is probably Krishna's Leela of stealing the butter. And by stealing the butter, he's stealing the hearts and minds of the Vrajavasis.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you.
Mataji, Pranam Mataji. No more questions, Mataji. It's a power-packed session today. It's my takeaway point is like whatever good happens, whatever bad happens, it's all Lord's plan, and Lord wants to surrender more. It was a wonderful session, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Mridula Mataji.
Mataji, can I just say it was a great session. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji, I can hear you.
I just wanted to ask, none of us believe we have any faults, we all think we are
perfect.
We don't really find so much faults in ourselves as we do with others. And we see other people who are very spiritually minded, so-called, but who are very, very toxic to the people in their lives. One, how do we stop ourselves from becoming that? And how do we deal with toxicity, like envy, like you said, because of this, with this Leela?
I was listening to another senior Vaishnava, His Grace Shankarshan Adhikari Prabhu, and he talks about how we all have this cancer in us, the cancer of the mind. And he was explaining beautifully that this cancer begins with our complaining tendency. And the reason we complain is because we have a tendency to compare. That person has this, I don't have this. And as you said, how can I not have it? I'm a better human being than the other person. I have better qualities than that other person. So this cancer stems from, the symptom of this is we have a tendency to complain. The reason we complain is because we have a tendency to compare. And when we compare, we tend to criticize. And the reason why we criticize is because we are envious. So he was talking about these 3 C's, and ultimately the source of all of this is our envious nature. This envy is actually what caused the poisonous nature of Kaliya. So Acharyas say, almost every other emotion can be used in the service of the Lord, but there is one thing that cannot be used in the service of the Lord, and that is envy. Envy is antithetical to being Krishna conscious. So the perfect antidote to envy is to receive the mercy of Vaishnavas, Guru, and Lord Hari. So the answer to your question is more association with devotees can help us reduce this envious nature in us. Actually, one other preacher was saying that the best way to practice humility is to praise the Vaishnavas. When you begin to praise the other Vaishnavas and you do it genuinely, one can come to the platform of humility, because you can't just be humble. It's not a switch that you turn on and turn off, right? So one way to practice humility is to glorify Vaishnavas, glorify Guru, glorify the Supreme Lord. But glorifying the Vaishnavas may be the most difficult thing for us to do. Even there we are hesitant, But without hesitation, we should glorify Vaishnavas. That is the beginning of our journey on this path of trying to be humble.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one last question. I think we are way over time. Lakshman Prabhu, did you have a question or comment? Or Saraswati Mataji, I see you raised your hand.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I just wanted to share that from the time I have joined ISKCON for these courses, I have learned to understand the nature of people around, and at least in a small way, able to deal with life better than before. And every time there's toxicity around, these classes help us, give us that strength, to not to become harsh like others, and not get affected by the toxicity around, and always pray to God, and pray to have that strength to deal with people around. And it's been really, really helpful. So thanks a lot for these sessions all of you conduct. It's very, very helpful for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Saraswati.
Prabhu, I'm sorry, I said I would call you. Do you have a question, Prabhu, or a comment or a realization? And then we will conclude the session.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji. First of all, I cannot thank you enough for all the kind of great blessings and all the kind of explanations that you do so wonderfully, that are really motivating every morning. And my question, Mataji, for in today's session is like, the sage, when he was doing meditation deep under the water, and fishes come to him to ask him, saying, to protect them from the Garuda, and then he does his duty by protecting the fish, but then he ends up, getting a curse. But in this course, like he did his materialistic duty there, but then his fate was a curse. So how can this be understood, Mataji?
You mean Shaubari Rishi's fate was a curse? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, help me understand if I have understood it right.
Okay, so there are a little bit more details behind the rest of the pastime, which we will not go into now. We can probably take it up during our Sunday session, because there are other things that happen. Shaubari Rishi is meditating under the water, and then he loses sight of what he was actually ultimately meditating on, and gets into a marriage, and then realizes, what have I done? How foolish have I been? Everything that I sacrificed for, I lost sight of it in just a moment. And then ultimately he realizes that his mistake, and then he goes back to his original inclination to meditate on Lord Krishna. So that's a separate pastime. We will not go into the details of that. Hare Krishna. So
Thank you,
can we
Mataji.
close the session here? Vineet Prabhu? Hare Krishna. Shankar Prabhu, you had an announcement?
Yes, there were a couple of questions in the chat was not addressed. I will copy paste those questions to you, and maybe this can be addressed in session tomorrow.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was not keeping track of the chat. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everybody. Have a blessed day. We will see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare
Hari
Krishna
Bol,
Mataji.
Hari Bol, Hari
Thank you
Bol.
very much.
Wonderful session. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Have a blessed day.
Same to you.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Mataji, I will close the